I am Sarah. Welcome to my live. If you're watching this on the replay, hi. um, I have Checkers with me today. There's Checkers, good little bunny. So, come for the deconstruction talk, stay for the cute animals. So just kind of a little background about me. I grew up Protestant, Christian, pretty evangelical. And I started questioning my faith in my mid 20s. Hi, Minnie. Why not both? What did I say? No, I don't remember. Hey, Dr. Joe. I am. Thanks. It's my ode to the Midwest. Same M. Oh, gotcha, Minnie. Perfect M. Yes, we celebrate our Midwest silliness here. Well, I was just giving kind of my typical intro. So if there is anyone that's new, hi, I'm Sarah, and we talk about deconstruction and the questioning of faith here. I am an agnostic atheist, but any and all are welcome as long as we're respectful of each other. Hey, John. Well, thanks for coming. Hi. Well, hey, April. Nice. Oh, yes. Meatball made an appearance on TikTok. I do not spell my name with an H. No H. Oh, you okay? Okay. Let's see if I can make this work this time. Did I do it? Ugh. So I'm trying to set it to the subscriber only thing, and it's still just like, it's like ignores me when I do it. Oh, yay, I did it. Hooray. Good. Yay, much better. Although, yeah, good. We hadn't had any crazy comments. For Checkers fans, there's, oh, I'm not trying to get myself in there, but there's Checkers. Hi, little bunny. Oh, thank you. She's very cuddly today. She's in a cuddly mood. Hi, Krista. Oh, wait, get back there. Oh, technology is not, I'm not, there we go. I'm the worst at that. Thanks, Buns. Well, I hope you guys are all having a good Tuesday. Right? Yes. I always have to check my watch to know what day it is. I forget all the time. For anyone who's new, hi, welcome. Oh, thanks, John, for being a member. How fun. So yeah, for people who are a little new to YouTube, which honestly, I'm new to YouTube, still figuring this out. So like, subscribe actually means to follow, and being a member actually means you're subscribing. Hello, Charles. Yes, it must be Tuesday because we're on YouTube. Hi, good evening. seems that we just have friendly faces today, which is nice. No one's gonna yell weird things. Well, today on TikTok, I made a video about Charles. I kind of dipped my toe into talking about biblical prophecy because I hear this exact saying from Christians really frequently that Jesus fulfilled 300 prophecies. And I know that it's one of those things that it's one of those confirmation bias things, right? If you already believe it, you see that number and you just say yes, right? And someone sent me their list of here's the list of 300 prophecies, and some of them are just not even close to being a prophecy. Hi, LK. Yeah, John, I don't think there are either. I mean, um, there are so many that are just a total stretch. Hi, Joe. But I had someone arguing that there was this one of the very first ones on these published lists is just part of a genealogy. And he was arguing that, well, it's just, it's describing an archetype or it's foreshadowing and doing absolutely none of those things. But, I think most people, when they hear that list, they don't actually go through and check everything on the list. John says you should send him the at least 100 contradictions in the Bible. Hi, Thomas. Do you think we're in the end times? Charles says 97% of all statistics are made up on the spot. I love it. Did any of you watch 30 Rock? Nice, John. There's an episode where one of the characters... Oh, you're so welcome, Rachel. I'm so glad it's helpful. Thomas's comment really reminds me of this episode of 30 Rock where one of the characters is convinced the end of the world is coming, and his friends all dress up in costumes. Like, I just saw a pale horse. Anyway, I'm old, but if you haven't watched 30 Rock, it's fun. I think I can. Okay. Hi, Winter. Spark, hi. Oh, that's fair, Thomas. I get that. I do remember reading Revelation when I was a Christian and trying to figure out, like, okay, what parts of this, like, figurative language is literal? Like, are there really going to be locusts with shields? I think, was it no, grasshoppers? Somebody had shields. Gosh, it's been so long, I don't remember now. No, you're good, John Paul. Absolutely. Oh, interesting, Charles. Unforeseen says, when you were a Christian, did you get offended when people would say they were atheists? Seems a lot of Christians do find it offensive. Hi, Rose. I It did not offend me, but I'm sure I felt some need to like, oh, you're an atheist? Well, like, let's talk about it. Tell me about it so I can eventually convert you. Brian says, reading Revelation is a speed run to deconstructing. Ever heard of the four agreements? I don't think so. Oh, no, Peter. How long did it take for the fear of hell to leave for you? For me personally, I think once I got to the place that I stopped believing in God altogether, then I truly didn't think that hell existed either. But I can tell you, like, one of the most common questions I get is, how do I get over the fear of hell? Like, having that lingering fear is really normal, even though it sucks. And I, you know, I don't have any like easy answer or quick fix, but it does get easier with time, so give yourself a lot of compassion. Hmm. Thomas says, a lot of the time it's unhappy people who think the world is ending. Well, and I think it's a really kind of seductive idea because it makes you feel like you're part of this battle and you are important, like you play an important role. Um, and I think it makes things feel urgent, which makes them, yeah, feel purposeful. John says, I never struggled with religious trauma once I left, but I understand why a lot of people do. That's why there's Recovering from Religion. Yeah, there's a great organization called Recovering from Religion, and they have support groups, they have resources. It's just a really cool organization. Briley says, how many hells do you fear? Do you fear every conception of hell? Did you fear them as a believer? So yeah, I mean, the interesting thing, Briley, I think hi Eve, for people who have had that fear and who truly believed in any one particular hell, I think sometimes that fear just hangs on, even though it isn't totally logical. Like I've had many people say, look, I don't even believe in God anymore, but I still have this like nagging fear of hell. And I think part of it is because, especially in evangelicalism, the depiction of hell is so horrifying that there's always like, yeah, but what if part of your brain, because it used to scare you so badly. Hi, Night Shift. Joe says, knowing hell was a later invention is a big help. Hi, Travis. Travis says, I'm kind of new here. Did you leave the faith as far as giving up on Jesus? So I was a very devoted Christian for a long time. And then I went through a really long questioning process period of time. And I ended up at the end of that, I just wasn't convinced God was real anymore. But to clarify, it wasn't that I gave up on Jesus. I tried as hard as I could to keep believing, and I just wasn't able to. Rachel, that's something on your end then. Hi. Eve says, I had a lingering fear of hell for years, but it wasn't a constant fear, just a once in a while. I would think, what if? Christopher says, I'm remembering all the hell simulations churches do on Halloween. Yeah. I actually never went to one of those. But like it's like a haunted house, but hell. I did see the play Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames, which is awful. Night Shift says the Christian description of heaven sounds like hell to me. Yeah, and that's another whole thing is there's a lot of logical problems with that concept of heaven too. You're welcome, Travis. So Absurdist is asking about working for the Salvation Army. I mean, it's, well, one, the ethics of that are, I can't tell you a right or wrong answer, but I mean, I think it probably would ethically be different if, like, your paid job was to preach. That would be different than working for an organization like Salvation Army. So I personally don't see an issue with it, but I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's something you have to figure out what makes sense to you. Hi, Rachel. Joshua says leaving faith or growing or outgrowing faith. That's an interesting way of putting it. So I stopped believing in God back in 2009. So it's been a long time. But it wasn't, I mean, the whole process of questioning for me was about a year. So it wasn't like I gently, slowly grew out of it. It felt a lot more concrete and dramatic than that. Hello, little bunny. Welcome back. Thanks, Charles. Sheila says, for me, it was just kind of it was just letting go. Rachel asks, did you feel like a different person once you stopped believing in a good way? I know I feel like a brand new person. Yeah, it was definitely like my whole world turned upside down for sure. And at first, no, I didn't feel like a different person, but over kind of, I don't know, it took me a while to sort of get my feet under me again, like I just felt so discombobulated for a while. But I definitely do think that was the end result, is I see the world so differently now. And um, I, I, I think I can be a lot more authentic in my relationships. Winter says, and more authentic to myself too. Well, Guillermo, that was incredibly condescending. Thanks for that. But the idea that if we don't choose God, God chooses us, then salvation is completely in God's responsibility. And that means if I don't believe, it's not my fault. Um, and if God wants me to believe, it's up to him. Rachel says, the peace that you're promised in Christianity doesn't happen until you become agnostic or atheist. Sheila, I'm guessing children are related in that, like, how would you raise them differently would be my guess. Hi, Joey. Yeah, that's true, Sheila. Yeah, there is a very different experience doing this as a woman, um, particularly on YouTube. Also, a good point, Briley says um, to Guillermo, that you realize it also means you shouldn't feel proud of your belief. You didn't choose it. It's true, Sheila. Yeah. I don't think Justin gets that question, at least not very frequently. They never talk about his eyes either. Yeah, I weirdly get a lot of comments about, and they're usually sort of negative about my eyes. Like, oh, you have sad eyes, or you look dead in your eyes. Or one person told me I had like reptilian demon eyes. It's just what I look like. I'm sorry. uh, Joey says, yeah, the way the Bible subjugates women is crazy. I don't understand how anyone, even a female, could be associated with that. I mean, I think part of it is I guess it depends on how you get into the faith. But often you are focusing on the good parts and then you kind of shelve the bad parts and like put them in a box, in your head and try not to think about them. But certainly when I was a believer, it absolutely bothered me that like women weren't allowed to preach. That really bothered me. Sheila says the way that the men talk to Promise is ridiculous. I actually haven't listened to her. Like I follow her TikTok and listen to her TikToks, but I haven't heard her much on the calls. That is she on the line? I think. But I'm sure the way they talk to her is ridiculous. SD says we need a woman pope. Hi, Jeffrey. Thanks, Briley. Yeah, Promise is incredible. I mean, she's awesome. Nice. Yeah, I'm sure Promise can handle them. Absolutely. Justin. Justin, thank you for this super chat. Justin says, I'd vote Pope Sarah and Cardinal Ruby. Cardinal Ruby is being a scaredy cat right now because 3 hours ago it was thundering, and so she's hiding. Oh, well, thank you so much, Spark. Spark says, I remember the first time I stumbled across you on TikTok, I thought you had the kindest eyes and most pleasant and caring demeanor. Well, thank you. I'm so glad that you followed and that I get to know you now. Hi, David. Yes, this is live. Yeah, Joey, so much about King David is really messed up, and the way women are treated is really terrible. Jake, I don't answer questions about my personal life. Civilian says, why do you not deserve hell? Because I have never done anything that has caused infinite harm. So I don't think I deserve infinite punishment. Matthew, hi. Checkers is going to be the Inquisitor. You know what? That's absolutely true. Checkers, you want to say hi? Oh, are we cleaning? They're so cute. When they scratch their ears just like a dog. Okay. That is sassy Checkers. Thanks. Have you ever violated God's commandments? Yep. I don't think I deserve eternal, infinite punishment for that. Yes, Justin's channel is awesome. I agree. John says, now that the new pope is from Chicago, it's new canonical law that ketchup is not allowed on hot dogs. You're damn right. God is an infinite God. What is he supposed to do with people who violate his law? He has so many options. He could give people an appropriate, proportional punishment. Like, if I lie to my mom about making my bed, okay, well, I have broken God's commandments, but do you think I deserve infinite suffering for that? No, I probably deserve to be sent to my room for 5 minutes, right? I mean, God could do all kinds of things that for people who break his laws. Hi, crazy girl. Absurdist, no ketchup on your hot dogs. Hey, Lem. Did you grow up Christian? I did, yes. Crazy girl says, we don't deserve hell, so God sent his one and only son to die. That's what I think. So I understand the appeal of the message that, well, Jesus is going to save us from our terrible selves. But it is really absolving God of any responsibility. Thank you, Justin. Justin, for the super chat. First papal edict from Pope Sarah, only stone ground real mustard on dogs, no ketchup. Justin, I need to know this now. Have you had a Chicago style hot dog? There are a lot of very specific requirements on this hot dog. Oh, coleslaw is good too, though. Oh, Winter, you can't put mayo on it. No. What is your justice system based off of? Empathy and logic. Joey says, it was hard being honest with people about my lack of faith growing up. Now that I'm 45, I don't care as much anymore. My family kicked me out when I was younger because I wasn't Christian. Man, I'm so sorry. That really absolutely sucks. Okay, Justin, it's on the list now. You need a Chicago dog. Rachel says, I never understood the concept of Christianity talking about free will. It's not free will when the threat of hell is held over you. A civilian says, if you made a pot, would you have the authority to do whatever you wish with that pot? So we are not inanimate objects, though. We are living creatures that experience pain and fear and worry. And so I think a much better metaphor is, can a parent do anything they want to a child because they made that child? And no, of course, the answer is no, they cannot. Because even though they created that child, it is now its own autonomous being. And so, no, you can't do whatever you want to that child. Same thing. Oh, well, hi, Satan. You're so welcome. Oh, we do, Spark. SD says, we still need something to bring people together like churches do. People need a support system. I absolutely agree. I mean, I think when you deconstruct your faith, one of the most difficult things is that you essentially get kicked out of your community. And it is hard to rebuild community after that. Adam says, couldn't God just get rid of sin instead of creating it or torturing people because of it? Yeah, you would think so. Brian says, hi, Satan has never sounded so nice. The parent didn't create the child ex nihilo. I never know how to pronounce that word. The parent had the child grow inside of them. So the parents made a decision and things came together and then created a child. Like, I don't really understand where you're, like, if a potter makes a pot out of clay, the potter didn't create the clay either. Flower says, you are reasoning with a human mind. That's a very low degree of intellect. It's what I got. I unfortunately only have a human mind. I'll do my best. Hi, Mohammed. Dog says, the truth is it doesn't matter what we think we deserve. An infinite and holy God is the only one that decides that. If he's holy and perfect, he cannot be in the presence of any sin. Well, one, in the Bible, God is absolutely in the presence of sin all the time, lots of times. So that part isn't quite true. But to the other part, if you say, well, God is, and it just is what it is, and you just have to fall in line or not, I would not worship a God that I thought was bad. Even if that God was the creator of the universe. If I thought that God was bad, I would not worship that God. So, do you worship God because he's good or because he's powerful? And if you worship God because you think he's good, that means you have made a judgment about God. You have looked at God's actions and you have used your own standard to determine, yes, this God is worthy of worship. So I think it matters to you too. Yeah, absolutely, Brian. Yeah, in Job, Satan goes up and hangs out with God. Supernatural says, according to the Bible, God is a very wrathful and a jealous God, but I thought jealousy is a sin. Yeah, so this is going to be one of those words don't mean words thing where apparently jealousy and envy mean totally different things. Um, yeah, but honestly, I mean, God does all kinds of things that if a human did it, it would be sinful. Um, it does seem to be sort of a do as I say, not as I do kind of morality. Mercedes says, woman came from the rib. Mercedes, do you think that men and women have a different number of ribs? Hi, Olive, welcome. Oh no, Brian, I started reading your comment and now that song is going to be in my head forever and ever. Brian says, our God is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above with wisdom, power, and wait, why'd the bear have to kill like 42 kids? No, no. Briley says, according to the Bible, God is jealous, God is love, and love is not jealous. Unsquarable circle. Charlotte says, do you worship God because he's good or because you go to hell if you don't? Yeah. I mean, and this whole idea that, God just wants a relationship with us and he gave you free will so that you could freely choose him and God just wants you to love him back doesn't square with having hell. Because if you have a choice where it's love me, but if you don't love me, I will torment you for eternity. You would never really know if you chose love purely because you loved the person or because you didn't want the terrible, awful consequence. Adding hell actually removes free will. Hey, Yep. Thanks so much for the super chat. Yep says, do you think God, in how the Bible describes a God, could be a being that is eventually created through evolutionary processes? I mean, it would just sort of kind of kick the can down the road a little bit. So it would raise, I would have a lot of questions, like, okay, if there is some sort of superhuman supreme being, um, why aren't there more? Are there lots and lots of them? Why would there just be one? I don't know. I would have a lot of questions. But it's an interesting idea. Adam says, if someone wants a relationship with me, then they need to introduce themselves to me and not create hell. Yes, that's completely reasonable. Justin, thank you for the super chat. Justin says, I would expect a super evolved being to to not be so stupid though. Justin and I are, if you've seen, we on our on my YouTube page, we're going through the Bible kind of chapter by chapter. And so we're just halfway through the book of Genesis right now. And it is amazing how much, if you go reread Genesis, God in that book does not know what's happening a lot of the time. He seems surprised with some frequency. And it's interesting reading it now. Like, I didn't remember that when I read it the first time. Hey, Olive, I have like an FAQ playlist, and that'll give you my whole backstory. Shallot, I don't think God actually created rules, because I don't think God exists. Jonathan, if hell was created for Satan and not for us, that means no humans are ever going to go there. Where does morality come from? It comes from your brain. It's a human construct that we have because we have the ability to reason and we experience empathy. Thank you, Mercedes. Brian says, true, hell is exclusively for mosquitoes. Do you think God has emotions? The God described in the Bible certainly has emotions. So Jonathan says, God didn't design hell as a place for people. His desire has always been for us to live with him and not be separated from him. So no one goes then, right? What if people don't have empathy? What if people don't care? Well, that happens, if you want to participate in a community, if you want to be part of society, then you have to abide by the rules. If you don't abide by the rules, you get kicked out of that society. So if you are a one of those rare people who does not experience empathy, you can follow the rules anyway so that you get the benefits of being in the community, or you can leave the community and be all by yourself. So, Jonathan, I want to tell you first, Jonathan, everything you're typing, I have heard dozens and dozens of times before. So, what you're typing into the chat is not new information. The idea that God loves us so much that he gave us a choice does not line up with the teaching of hell. So, if I give you a choice and I say, I want you to love me, I want you to pick me, and I want you to have a free choice, but if you don't decide to love me, I am going to burn you in a pit in my backyard. Right? Like, that's not a free choice. That's coercive. And so if God really loved us and really wanted us to have a free choice, he wouldn't have an or else, right? He would give you a different good option, right? And then you'd really be choosing God just because you loved him and not because not because you're trying to avoid a negative consequence. Boomshot, you are not explaining anything I haven't heard a dozen times before. Are there universal laws? Not like gravity. Different societies do have different laws. Humans have a lot of morals in common, though, because we are all relatively similar, right? So, because if you experience empathy, you probably have similar morals to another human who experiences empathy. So that's why even in other cultures there are differences, there are also a lot of similarities because we're all humans. Indeed, Brian. Boomshot, you were trying to explain that if someone buys you a movie ticket, you have to accept the ticket to go, right? That's why you have to accept Jesus' sacrifice. I read it. Sai says, are you just spiritual or agnostic or atheist? So I describe myself as an agnostic atheist, meaning that I don't believe in God, but I also don't think that I can know for sure. So crazy says, by that reasoning, evil can just continue to exist without punishment. Evil as in, I don't know what words I'm allowed to say on YouTube versus TikTok. So ending someone's life or assaulting someone can go unpunished. But the thing is crazy, God in the Old Testament commands his followers to do those very evil things. He also has laws that generally treat women as property when that type of assault happens. And so if you want those two things to be punished, Christianity might not be the best way to go. Jonathan, it's like you didn't hear anything I said. Again, if God wanted us to have a choice, he wouldn't give us a threat. And if God really wanted us to have a choice, he would make himself apparent so that we could actually really get to know him. And no, reading the Bible and praying it's not the same. He wouldn't be hiding. So no, I'm sorry. It does not seem like God is coming from this loving place of giving us choices. Oops. Hi, Joey. Oh, thanks so much for watching our Bible study. I appreciate it. Shallot, I don't believe in God at all. Shallot says, I didn't ask what's in the Bible, I asked what you believe. Do you believe God has emotions? So, no, because I don't believe God exists. Were you a Christian at one time? Yes, I was a Christian for about 20 years, very devout. No, Jonathan, the cross does not prove that. I don't see Jesus right now, right? Like I just have a book that tells me that it happened. That's not showing up. Like what if you had a parent who was like, I love you so much that I'm never going to show up, but here's an old letter that I wrote to someone else. I have to show you guys. How cute is that little bunny? I love when they get all loungy and squishy. Also, if you have never seen a bunny's tail, like they're actually longer than you'd think when they're all just like relaxed. Yeah, you all splooted out, you silly little bunny. That's Checkers. She's the cutest. Oops. There we go. Bunny love. No, I don't have any cats. Actually, I'm allergic. For people asking why I don't believe anymore, I have an FAQ playlist that gives you my whole backstory. So cute. She just stretched out her back legs. I love it. That's a large dust bunny. Hi, Jeremy. So, Shallot, the reason I'm talking about a God sometimes, like hypothetically, is people are asking me either what I used to believe, or Christians are talking about their faith, and I'm discussing what I used to believe and kind of meeting the Christians where they are. I think I also talk about some of the things that don't make sense to me anymore. I used to have this belief system and then I started to see all these holes in it. And so I'm describing to you some of the holes that I now see in that belief system. Jonathan says, I'm sorry you feel this way, but I used to think that way. Same, Jonathan. I used to think like you did. Yeah, Sheila says we also need community. So yeah, Shallot, this is for people who need that community and connection. Hi, Seth. Where's the FAQ list? It should be on my page. Like when you go to just like my YouTube page, it should say that. Like FAQ playlist. Oh, thank you, Charles. Yeah, Supernatural says, if God doesn't want us to sin, why did he create it? And I think that's the part where people are absolving God of any responsibility when in fact he designed everything in this belief system. And not only did he design everything, but he knew how it all was going to turn out. So he picked and chose how he wanted things to function and knew all of the ramifications of his decisions. That's a lot of responsibility. Oh, well, I'm glad you're here, Emily. Oh, Moonpilled says, hell has been conquered by Christ. His death ensured none of mankind will see hell. Are you a Christian Universalist? Absurdist, don't you dare put ketchup on that hot dog. In a way, yes. You know, it is interesting though. I mean, the concept of hell is not at all agreed upon amongst Christians. Yeah, Jason says, if God didn't want Adam and Eve to sin, why did he create the deceptive serpent? Right? It's bad enough that God put this tree in the garden and said, like, okay, don't eat it. But then he also allowed the serpent to be in there, and the serpent who's going to trick them. Like, that seems just unnecessarily mean. It's almost like God is the author of confusion. Also, look at that little leg. Her front feet are so little and her back feet are so big. Like, how cute, oops, how cute is that? Do you know when bunnies get angry, they like thump, they make a big thump sound, like with their big back feet. It's so cute. Oops, sorry, I'm bad with this. Hey, Yep. Thank you so much for the super chat. Yep says, can you see a possibility where maybe you're in your 70s or 80s, you start to believe in religion again? It seems like a common occurrence for humans. I mean, I cannot predict the future. So, you know, when I was a Christian, I never imagined that I would ever be in this position. It seemed impossible for me to not believe. So, while it doesn't seem likely to me right now, who knows, right? I can't predict the future, so I don't know. Oh, Emily, that's so sweet. Jonathan says it was a choice. We always had free will. So in the Garden of Eden, the tree they were not supposed to eat from was the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So we can reasonably assume that before they ate from that tree, they did not know what good and evil were. So you are putting these two brand new humans, right? They were just made into this garden. You tell them they can't eat from a tree. And then they don't know they don't know good and evil, right? They have no knowledge of good and evil. Do they even know that disobedience is wrong? Do they know what wrong is? Do they know what bad is? And so you have these essentially toddlers who don't know anything about the world. They have no knowledge of good and evil. And then you allow a serpent to come in and trick them. It's not even just that he left the tree there. Like the addition of the serpent makes it so much worse. And again, this is God's perfect little garden. Like the serpent was only in there because God allowed it to be in there. It sounds very much like a setup. Good grief. Cody, there's no need to talk to people like that. I don't know what button to push. Bailey says, I feel like putting the tree in the garden is the equivalent of putting a knife in a baby's playpen. Jonathan says, God created them to be obedient. God's word was enough. Well, if he created them to be obedient, you mean like he created them to... If they don't know what good and evil are, and they just have to be obedient, that's the most... That is the most rudimentary type of morality. You don't have any sense of right and wrong. You just obey. Don't question, just obey. Like that's pretty scary and pretty bad. And again, the idea that they wouldn't have even known that disobedience was wrong because they didn't know right from wrong. Still a choice. Jonathan. Jonathan, you are so determined to put all the blame on humans and never hold your God accountable for any of his actions. But your God is all powerful. Your God designed everything, right? So everything works the way it does because of his design, his choices. And not only did your God design everything, but he knew how it was all going to turn out. So why does your God not have any responsibility? Blake says, if you read the Bible, you will notice that all the predictions made all came true. I don't think that's correct. I know, Brian, they do. Yeah, for all the prophecy stuff, you all can go hang out with Justin. Alex says, I heard her perfectly fine. She's assuming they didn't understand disobeying was wrong. Good and evil could have had a different meaning in that context. So, in this version of words don't mean words, you're saying good and evil actually don't mean good and evil? I'm saying they were grown adults capable of logical thoughts. Well, I don't know, right? I mean, none of us could imagine what it's like to not understand good and evil. Like, we can't fathom what that would be like. So, I, I don't know why you would think that good and evil would mean something else than good and evil. Blake says, God wants us to have free will because he loves us. Well, that's great. Then he should not threaten us with hell if he wants us to make free choices. What would you say is the worst story in the Bible that shows God's evilness? The worst story in the Bible, I think, is Job. Abe, it is a threat if God created it. And yet Job still worshiped God. Yeah, that's a terrible story. Um, God demonstrates in that story that he's not worthy of worship. It is abusive. I agree, Emily. Justin's back. Justin, someone in the chat claimed that every single prophecy in the Bible has come true. Hey, Rip, thank you so much for the super chat. Rip says, I used to be a former Mormon. Never felt like I fit in, so I just stopped going. Best decision, non-decision of my life. Well, welcome. We're glad you're here. Matthew says, what happened to Job's kids' free will? Yeah, Job's children in that story are not respected as their own individual humans. They are essentially treated as property. God's wrath was harsh. That's one way of putting it. Yeah, God treated people pretty badly. I think when you like It's late. I'm having trouble forming words here. Um, you know, if you think God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and that God is perfect goodness, then yeah, you have to say God's wrath is also goodness. And so God allowing all of his children just to be eliminated, you have to tell yourself that that's good. Jonathan says, we live in a broken world. Okay, so God's, again, you are completely absolving God of any responsibility, even though God created everything, including God decided what the consequences were going to be when Adam and Eve sinned. So when Adam and Eve sinned, this whole idea of the fall, God chose that particular consequence. Like, that did not have to be the consequence. Like, instead of cursing the entirety of humanity and the planet for almost ever, God could have sat Adam and Eve down, had a conversation with them about what they did was wrong, and then forgiven them. And then they continue on in Eden. That could have happened. But God chose a different path. And so the reason that the world is broken is, at minimum, in part God's fault, because he chose that this is what the consequence was going to be. So Satan doesn't exist in that story. So is Satan as powerful as God? Does Satan only exist because God created Satan? Or do you think Satan somehow has become, did Satan create himself? Checkers has like moved around and her head is sleeping on my foot. It's so cute. Where's Ruby? Ruby has put herself to bed. She was afraid of the thunder. JS says, I remember asking my parents as a child what happened to Job's family. They looked super uncomfortable. Yeah, like Job just gets new kids and it's fine. He just gets new ones. No big deal. All right, friends. I have been at this long enough. I need to call it a night. Thank you so much for hanging out and for all your comments and super chats and all the support. Yes, it is cereal time. Yay, cereal. If you are not into late night cereal, I would highly recommend it. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So I have an account on TikTok and I do this most evenings on TikTok and then here on YouTube. I do this on Tuesdays. So come find me here on Tuesdays, or you can find me over on TikTok most other nights. Yeah, yes to that stuff, except no ketchup on your hot dogs. All right, for everyone who's still here, wait, I'm gonna hang on. I want to show you how cute this is. How do I flip this around? Look at the little bunny. She's sleeping on my toes. Ugh, the cutest. Okay. So that was, yes, thanks. That's checkers. All right, you all have a wonderful night, and I will talk to you guys soon.